The evening sun draped the quiet streets in a golden haze, the kind that makes the world look peaceful, almost perfect. Officer James leaned back in his patrol car, ready to call it a day. It had been one of those uneventful shifts, no emergencies, no chases, just the hum of tires on asphalt and the soft murmur of the radio. He thought his shift would end in silence, until he heard it, a sound that cut through the calm like a knife through glass, the high, trembling cry of a child that he looked up just in time to see a little girl, barefoot, tear-streaked, and breathless, sprinting toward him. Her pink dress was crumpled, her small fists clutching the air as if reaching for safety itself. "Please," she sobbed, her voice breaking, "please follow me home. Mommy won't wake up." In that instant, everything changed. There was no hesitation, no protocol checklist, no thought of ending his shift. Only instinct, that deep, unshakable sense every good officer carries, that when a child cries for help, you run. What James didn't know was that this would be the moment that would stay with him forever, the moment that would test his heart, his duty, and the very meaning of compassion, because what waited for him at the end of that short, desperate run wasn't just a rescue, it was a story of quiet bravery, a mother's love, and a community reminded of what it truly means to care. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the suburban streets in shades of amber and rose. It was the kind of evening that lulled the world into stillness. Birds quieted in their nests, porch lights flickered on one by one, and the hum of Officer James Carter's patrol car filled the calm like a soft background tune. He had been on duty since morning, 12 long hours patrolling familiar roads, checking on neighborhoods, waving at old Mr. Thompson who always sat by his porch with his radio on. It had been an ordinary day in an ordinary town. But the quiet often hides what the eyes can't see. Then, out of nowhere, came that sound. A scream, thin, high, and trembling, echoing off the empty street. The sound of pure fear. James's hand froze over the radio, another cry followed. He turned sharply, and there she was, a little girl, maybe 6, sprinting barefoot down the sidewalk, her face streaked with tears, hair tangled, her tiny body shaking with exhaustion. "Officer," she gasped, stumbling toward him. "Please, please come. Mommy won't wake up." James was out of the car before she could take another breath. He crouched to meet her gaze, his voice calm but urgent. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here. What's your name?" "Emily," she whispered. "Please hurry." Her small hand clutched his sleeve like a lifeline. There was no time for radio codes or backup calls. He could see the terror in her eyes. This wasn't a prank or a misunderstanding. This was real. "All right, Emily," he said softly. "Show me the way." They started running. Her little legs moved as fast as they could, her bare feet slapping the pavement, but James could tell she had been running for a while. He slowed his pace to keep beside her, glancing around. The neighborhood grew older as they went, houses with chipped paint, rusted mailboxes, lawns that hadn't seen care in months. A heaviness hung in the air. "Emily," he said gently, "how long has your mommy been asleep?" Her lip quivered. "Since morning. She was coughing last night, and I tried to make her soup. But I couldn't reach the stove." James swallowed hard. "You did the right thing coming to find me." They reached a narrow driveway leading to a small, neglected house. The grass was waist-high in places, toys scattered near the steps, and the front door stood slightly open, creaking in the breeze. The silence was the worst part. James pushed the door open. The air inside was heavy, stale, with a faint smell of dust and something else, sickness. The living room was cluttered, stacks of unopened bills, empty soup cans, a worn sofa with a child's blanket folded neatly on one side. He stepped carefully, every instinct alert. Emily pointed to the bedroom. "In there." He entered quietly, his heart tightening. A young woman, early 20s, pale and fragile, lay on the bed, her skin slick with sweat. A glass of water sat half empty on the nightstand beside her. James pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A faint pulse. "Weak, but there, thank God," he breathed. He turned to Emily. "She's alive." Don't worry. He called dispatch, his voice calm but quick. I need an ambulance to Maple Avenue, possible respiratory distress. One adult female, unconscious but breathing. Emily hovered near the doorway, her small frame trembling. Is she gonna die? James's throat tightened. No, sweetheart. Not if we help her right now. He fetched a blanket from the couch, covered the young woman gently, and cracked open a window for air. Then he crouched again, meeting Emily's wide eyes. You were very brave to find me. You probably saved your mom's life. Her tears fell again, but this time, not from fear, from hope. Minutes later, flashing red lights painted the street as paramedics rushed in. They worked quickly, placing oxygen, checking vitals, speaking in clipped tones. James stayed with Emily, keeping her turned away from the sight. When they carried her mother out on a stretcher, Emily broke. Mommy. James lifted her into his arms before she could run after them. Hey, she's going to the hospital now. You can come with me, okay? Emily buried her face in his shoulder and nodded. At the hospital, James stayed long after the paperwork was done. He sat with Emily in the sterile waiting area, its white walls humming with fluorescent light. She wouldn't let go of his hand, and he didn't ask her to. Hours passed. Nurses walked by. Machines beeped softly behind closed doors. Finally, a doctor emerged. Officer Carter? The woman you brought in, she's stable. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, untreated pneumonia. Another few hours and, it might have been too late. James exhaled slowly. She's going to be okay? With rest and medication, yes. But she'll need help at home. He looked at Emily, asleep in the chair beside him, her head resting on his arm. Her hair was still tangled, her shoes missing, but for the first time, she looked peaceful. That night, as he drove home, James couldn't shake the image of their house, the unpaid bills, the cold kitchen, the lonely air. This wasn't neglect. It was survival. That woman had been fighting silently for her child until her body gave out. That he made a promise right there, he wouldn't let them fall back into that darkness. When Sarah, that was her name, he learned, woke in the hospital, she looked confused at first. Then terrified. Where's my daughter? She rasped. She's safe, James said from the doorway. You've got a brave little girl, ma'am. She's been right here the whole time. Tears filled her eyes. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for. You don't have to apologize, James said gently. You just need to get better. Over the next week, James visited daily. Sometimes he brought coloring books for Emily. Sometimes just conversation for Sarah. He learned about her life, how she'd been abandoned by her partner 2 years ago, left with no family and a 6-month-old baby. How she'd been juggling 2 cleaning jobs, sometimes skipping meals so Emily could eat. How she'd hidden her struggles out of pride and fear that someone might take her child away. The more James listened, the heavier his heart grew. But he also saw something beautiful, an unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. Love, even in exhaustion. One afternoon, as he left the hospital, James had an idea. He called a few people, fellow officers, local churches, and a small community aid group. Within days, word spread: groceries, clothes, money for bills. Volunteers offering repairs for the house. It was more than charity, it was solidarity. When Sarah was finally discharged, she returned home holding Emily's hand. What she found stopped her in her tracks. The yard had been trimmed. The broken front step repaired. The pantry was stocked with fresh groceries and warm blankets neatly folded. A small note sat on the table, from the people who believe no one should fight alone. Welcome home. Sarah pressed the note to her chest, tears streaming freely. Emily ran from room to room, giggling for the first time in weeks. Then she spotted James standing quietly by the door, hands in his pockets. Officer James, she cried, running to hug him. You kept your promise. He smiled, his voice thick. You did the hard part, kiddo. You saved your mom. Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, he said softly. You got better. That's all that matters. The neighborhood had changed. Not in looks, but in heart. Neighbors who once walked past each other in silence now stopped to talk. The story of the little girl who ran barefoot through the streets to save her mother had touched everyone. Sarah had found a steady job at a local daycare. Emily had started school, and every time she saw a police car, she waved like she was greeting family. One warm evening, as James drove through the same quiet street, he slowed near their house. Emily was playing with other kids in the yard, her laughter ringing out. Sarah stood by the gate, chatting with neighbors. She caught sight of him and waved. He smiled back. It wasn't heroism, he thought. It was humanity, the simplest kind. One act of courage from a child. One moment of compassion from a stranger. And an entire neighborhood reminded that kindness, once sparked, spreads like light. As the sun dipped low again, Officer James sat quietly in his car, watching Emily chase butterflies in the fading glow. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace. Closing message, for narration or video ending. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Because every click helps spread hope, every share reminds someone that goodness still exists, and every heart that listens becomes part of the light.